In today's Leeds news, Tanaka thought about leaving, contract calls that need to be made, Summerville's clause clarity, and rumour mill stories on Mauro Jr. and Tanner Tessmann. Hey folks, welcome to the Leeds View for Friday the 29th of May. It is Friday this week, isn't it? It is Friday. Yeah, it is Friday. I got this one right this week. We don't have 2 Fridays in this one. Hope you're all having a really good week so far. There's a bit of stuff to get stuck into today. There is the podcast out from last night. Myself and Paul Brooker had a bit of a look back and a chat about what will be a summer of change for Leeds United, not just off the field with Ellen Road, but in the boardroom and also on the pitch as well, with several contracts ticking down and due to expire in the next couple of days. So we look at that. We also got stuck into a little bit of rumour mill stuff, but not a huge amount. We will cover that at the weekend. Myself, Alex and Michael Maynard will be doing the Sunday sessions, which will be out on Sunday, hosted by Alex. And we'll get into that in a little bit more detail and talk about what the back pages are saying. And as I always say, when we get to the rumour mill section at the back end of today's video as well, it is very much back page stories. They're rumours. We'll see where they go over the course of the summer. But at this moment in time, we'll just talk about them. You can, if you're not into it, great. If you're into it, fine. All good. All good. But we'll start today with Tanaka and a story that came up in January about him leaving the club. And a bit of clarity that's been added to that now as well today. So Tanaka on paper this season, last season, whatever we were calling it now, played 28 Premier League games for Leeds, which in a first season for any player in the Premier League is not a bad situation to be in. But he only started 14 of those games. But due to the fact that he only started those 14 games, apparently he considered leaving the club back in January. Now, there is some obvious context that needs to be given to this. You've got a Japanese international footballer who wants to be part of their World Cup squad this summer. And to do that, he's got to be playing football. So there is that part. And at that moment in time, Tanaka wasn't playing a huge amount of football for Leeds. And again, a lot of us thought he should have been at that moment in time. But Daniel Farke had decided to go for a more defensive-minded midfield of Stack Ampadu and Ilya Gruev. That's Daniel Farke's prerogative. He's the manager. He can do that if he wants to. Whether we think he should have done it or not is irrelevant in this situation. But it did impact Tanaka. He wanted to play more football and he wasn't playing at that moment in time. But he was speaking to Sport Hochi and he did say the following around the situation. I thought if I didn't do well here, I'd never get to play again. But I made the comeback. I was a phoenix. There were talks of a transfer in the winter and I thought about moving, but I really wanted to play in the Premier League. And I told my teammates who weren't playing either, watch out, my time will definitely come. And it really did come. I think of life as a stock market. There are times when it falls, like during the Lehman stock or the pandemic. But I thought it would be good if I kept rising and I never stopped believing and continuing. Tanaka pointed out the Phoenix comment came from a YouTube comment around somebody when they said Tanaka keeps rising like the Phoenix. And he screenshotted that and saved it for motivation, which is a good thing to have. But I think when you look at Tanaka's comments in its entirety, and you probably have to over the last year or so, going back to the end of last season, he talked about being emotionally burnt out at the club. That was the end of last season. Started this season, there was comments that he said that he didn't know if he was up to the level of the Premier League and worried about that. Then you get to January and he's not playing enough football and he's thinking about leaving because, he wants to play more football. And what you get from this picture is a player that puts a huge amount of emotional pressure on his own shoulders. But I would say this does sound like an agent that agitated for a move in January because his client wasn't playing football. I think that's pretty clear in this. Tanaka wasn't playing, wants to get into the World Cup squad. All of a sudden, stories start emerging about Tanaka leaving Leeds United. And we saw them over the course of January and even into February as well. You're playing for Leeds United, there is a side before self element to this. Yes, 100% back yourself and players need to play football. But if you're not part of the starting 11, just work harder to get into that side. You can't be putting yourself ahead of the side. And that's been a Leeds mantra for a very long time. The other point of this as well is there are obvious translation areas of this where it's a very expressive language, and when it gets translated into English, it can come across as a far more emotive statement. So there is that part that needs to be added to this as well. But for me, he's had a pretty good first season at Leeds United. 14 starts, 28 games in total, 2 goals. Been an important part against Chelsea. I thought he was incredible at the start of the season. He still has his peak years ahead of him. So for me, better years are ahead for Tanaka at Leeds United. I hope he stays at the club. I hope he plays more football. But I do think he needs to give himself a little bit of a break emotionally if he can. Let's move on. A few months ahead for Leeds United when it comes to contract situations. And Kyle Newbold has an interesting piece in the Yorkshire Evening Post about the futures of Pascal Stroke and Ethan Ampadu. And he spoke with former Leeds United striker Jermaine Beckford, who gave his thoughts on the situation. As we all know, Pascal Stroke moves into the final year of his contract next month, as does Ethan Ampadu. And One way or another, a decision will need to be made around both players' futures. If Leeds can't get them signed down to a new contract, then a likely sale is on the cards for them. For Ethan Ampadu, he's in the same bracket as Pascal Struijk, and both of these calls need to be made soon so Leeds can start to focus on other areas like bringing players in and getting rid of players that don't have a future at the club over the next couple of months. The YP believes that the club plan to have contract talks with both players to extend their deals beyond next season, and it will clear up what the future picture looks like for both of these players. Beckford has been given his opinion on this as well, and he had the following to say. Pascal Struijk and Ethan Ampadu, both of them have been absolutely fantastic this season. You look at the strides they both made, the level of quality of performance they both put in, how robust both of them seem to be, and I want to see both of them stay. I desperately want to see them both stay. Ampadu has been unbelievable. He's leading by example on the pitch, not just with his vocal ability, but with his physical ability, putting himself on the line. Beckford also went on to point out that he'd like to see Karl Darlow remain at the club for a year or two more. His situation is slightly different to the other two given his age and his situation within the club. Karl Darlow will be looking at his next contract from a perspective of, where do I sit in a pecking order? Do I want to sit on a bench for a club and be a number two? Do I want to back myself to be a number one? He is coming in to the back end of his career. His situation is slightly different, but I would like to keep Karl Darlow at Leeds United. I think he had a fantastic season this year and a very strong end of last season. But I think for Karl Darlow, it's going to be, where do I sit in the pecking order for Leeds or for another club? So, yeah, that's going to be the interesting part from him. There are huge decisions that need to be made around Ethan Ampadu's future. If you were to let Ethan Ampadu move away from the club in the summer, trying to replace what Ethan Ampadu brings to Leeds United would cost you a huge amount of money. That would cause its own issues. From Pascal Struijk's perspective, he's the only left-footed centre-half you've got. The only other left-footed centre-back I've seen linked with Leeds is Ladislav Krejci. You could look at that, but that's going to cost you money as well. It's not going to be straightforward either. And then the goalkeeper situation, we have talked about it to death at this point, so we won't talk about it in any more detail than we already have. But yeah, an interesting couple of weeks ahead. They need to get these done and dusted, sorted, out of the way. None of these players are going to the World Cup. Get it done once their international friendlies are out of the way, and let's all move on into the summer months. Let's move on. So yesterday we got a bit of an update on the Crescencio Summerville transfer clause that could see Leeds pick up to an extra £4 million if he got an international call-up. And as there was significant enough noise around this, Yorkshire Evening Post chief sports writer Graham Smith did a little bit of digging on this situation. Now, to be very clear on this, the reports of this add-on or this clause didn't just materialise out of thin air. They do have an origin, and it goes all the way back to the 31st of July 2024. And these are the beats that came out at that time. So on July 31st, 2024, Sean Whitson, a West Ham news outlet, reported that there was a £4 million international clause. 1st of August 24, it was ran again. 2nd of August 24, Hammers News ran with it. And the 3rd of August 2024, the Yorkshire Evening Post mentioned clauses in his deal, or in the deal, but they didn't specifically call out an international clause. The 12th of December 2025, it appeared again on news around social media. And when Summerville was called up to the Dutch national side in March, which unfortunately he didn't get to play in because of injury, it materialised again, and it was talked about consistently. And when you look at the amount of outlets that talked about it and where did most of the noise has come from, it has all come pretty much from the West Ham side of things. Now, no one at any of those points along the way shot this down, poured cold water on it. It's now that he's going to the World Cup that the cold water has been poured on this, and you can read into that whatever way you want it. In the Yorkshire Evening Post, though, Graham Smith had the following to say. Speculation has been rife that Leeds could stand to earn a windfall from Summerville's impending international debut should he get on the pitch to win his first international cap. But the Yorkshire Evening Post has learned that reports on social media that emerged around the time of his transfer suggest a clause in the deal were wide of the mark. Club sources have confirmed that Leeds are not due any extra cash if Summerville plays for his international country. As I said, the origin of this story came from Sean Whetstone back in July 31st, 2024. And he at the time said that the deal was a £25 million deal to be paid in instalments. There was a further £5 million of performance-related standard add-ons, and there was an international debut clause there that would bring the potential deal to £34 million. And when you add up all the different clauses there, you can see where the £4 million fee or number has come from. Now, you can decide whether you believe this. I would tend to believe quite a lot of what Graham Smith would say. He's got strong sources at the club. He's a credible journalist. However, if you were to go down the more conspiratorial route, which I don't tend to normally do, but I'll give you the option on this one, It's not a great look for West Ham if they comes out after a relegation and serious financial trouble that they also owe another £5 million to be paid this summer. So the timing doesn't suit them either. And again, all of the news came from the West Ham side on this. It wasn't generated from the Leeds United reporters. So it's an interesting one. But as I say, I would take Graham Smith's side on this and believe what he has said. He's done the digging on it. And if he says there's no clause in it, I wouldn't think there's a clause in it. Let's move on. Get into the back pages, and Rumour Mill, as always, take this with a pinch of salt. We'll try and give you some clarity on these stories as well, where they've come from, the credibility of the outlet as well, and where they sit right now. We'll start off with Mauro Jr. This story came out this morning from Voteball International in the Netherlands, and they claim that PSV Eindhoven midfielder Mauro Jr. is a target of Leeds United this summer. Jr. is 27 years of age. He's played over 200 times for PSV Eindhoven. He is labelled as a box-to-box midfielder. He can play pretty much anywhere across midfield positions, and his manager Peter Bowes described him once as a soldier. So lots of things there to be interested in from a Leeds perspective. He can play in the back line as well. He's seen as a deep line playmaker, someone that can get moves going. This season, he had 1 goal and 9 assists in 26 appearances for PSV Eindhoven. He's also 5'7" in height. Now PSV, on the situation, this is where the origin of this story starts to get a bit interesting. They want to extend his deal to the club because he has a release clause in his deal that would allow him to leave for €18 million, so it's 16.5 million pounds. And Voteball claim that Leeds and FC Porto are both monitoring this situation. Now, the credibility of this, Porto are seen as the more concrete link to the player. Voteball International, I don't know how much stock I'd put in this. They tend to be very credible when it comes to local news around the Netherlands, but they tend and have a pretty strong record of floating Leeds United's name into stories to get clicks on stuff, and it doesn't always tend to end up being factually true. The situation on this is simple. He's got a release clause that PSV are worried about. Porto are definitely interested in him, and Leeds were said to have looked at him at some point, but there's no concrete link from Leeds at this point in time. So right now, it's just a rumour. Tanner Tessmann's another one we need to talk about because this has popped up again over the last couple of days, and this started back in May 18th when French outlet Junos Photo reported that Leeds were looking at midfield reinforcements coming into this summer, and one of the players they were looking at was Lyon's defensive midfielder Tanner Tessmann, who Lyon were said to be willing to sell if the price was right. The interesting part of this story is The Athletic then picked it up on the 20th of May, and they stated that Tessmann was open to a move away from the club this summer, but he won't be discussing anything with any club until after the World Cup is done. The Athletic also reported that Atletico Madrid tried to sign him back in January. At that time, Lyon weren't interested in selling. There's no indication whether Atletico Madrid are still interested in the player at this moment in time. If he was to go, right now his fee is £21 million. That's the rumoured cost on it, or that's at least what Atletico bid in January. To keep an eye on this, but as it stands right now, this is a park it until after the World Cup. The player is not making any decisions on his future until after that, and it's at a monitoring stage at best at this moment in time. So anything else that says otherwise, this ain't moving anywhere until at least after the World Cup, if it moves anywhere at all. So keep an eye on this one. Player to keep an eye on during the World Cup, see if he fits Leeds' model. He's a big lad. He's got an American sports background as well. For the Athletic player, will be a very strong player in the middle of the park. Whether Leeds have genuine interest in him remains to be seen. The Georgina Reuter story, by the way, as well, I'll throw it in real quick. Not covering it in detail. Spoke to a few journalists this morning about it, and they've said there's nothing credible in this right now. It's just a rumour, along with every other rumour. He's got 3 years left on his deal at Brighton and Hove Albion. He would cost a lot of money for Leeds. They're going to bring him back. So as of right now, until it becomes something more concrete, no point in going into it in any more detail than that. So that's where we'll leave it for now, folks. A massive thanks as always for supporting the channel. You can check out last night's podcast, linked over on the side, somewhere here if you want it. And if you like the content, you can like the video and you can subscribe to the channel for more of this type of content. I'll see you over the course of the weekend for the Sunday sessions. We might do a wrap up on Saturday tomorrow, depending on time. Not guaranteed, but keep an eye out for Sunday. And also you can download Analysis if you want to get involved in the opinions over the course of this summer. There will be some polls and options for commenting on opinions and rumours over the course of the summer if you're into that kind of thing. Outside that, have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you soon. See you later.